Hello, my name is Pedro and I'm creating a game called Synth Hunters. For me, the first step of creating any project is to dream big about it. Create a Pinterest board, gather references, write down things you love about your favorite games and how you could combine them. Start thinking of game mechanics, make drawings. This is very important because in order for you to keep the motivation to go through all the obstacles that any project needs, you need to love it. If you don't feel it, no one will. After a few weeks of doing this, I ended up with a very vague idea of the kind of game I wanted to create. These were my main elements. Leveling up characters MMORPG style, middle-aged world, the constant PvP of Rust, a hype skill cap like in Counter-Strike or StarCraft 2, lots of armors to customize your characters like in Terraria and Starbound, a big world to explore and roam around. This sounded extremely cool for me and I was super excited to jump in, but as I started researching more seriously, I quickly realized that it would be simply impossible to implement like 90% of the things I loved from these games. So the next step was to tone it down. This is the time to switch the focus to yourself. What are your skills? Maybe you are like me. I have some creative and artistic capacities, but I have zero programming skills. Or maybe you work a lot. Maybe you don't have any skills. That's fine. No one's born with skills. But hold on. If there's a will, there's a way. Consider you have a roof over your head, access to basic human needs such as food and water, a computer, internet, and you don't work 800 hours a week. Something I realized in my past projects is that I needed to learn how to design around my limitations. But how does that work? If, for instance, you only know how to program, but you don't have artistic capacities, you should design a game that will rely mostly on mechanics. Go for minimalistic looks. You can find great examples of games that are simply beautiful looking without too much detail on the characters or on the environments. Once you have some work done on your game, I'm sure you will be able to find someone that is interested in helping you with the artistic side of it. In my case, I'm a solo developer, no money, no programming skills, but I'm a professional 3D artist with many years of experience. So because of that, I'm capable of designing 3D characters, creating concept art, animate, etc. This allowed me to be a little bit more ambitious about my game, but I still needed to find a way to make possible creating hundreds of assets for the game, and that's how I discovered Voxel Art. It's pretty much like pixel art, but 3D. This way I managed to keep models simple, consistent, and, in my humble opinion, good looking. I could create characters in a few hours instead of days, and the simplicity of the shapes made it so much lighter for the software. I'm using Magica Voxel in case you're curious. It's just great. I practiced a bit every day and slowly started improving my voxel art designs. At this point, I found something crucial, the style of my game. So I still had a vague game idea, but at least I knew how it would look. And the whole point of this process is to narrow down elements, ideas and references until your game starts showing up. Once I found the style, I just couldn't stop myself. I started creating characters, assets, making tests. I even purchased a C++ programming course. But after a few weeks of this, my brother, who is also my personal advisor, told me he thought the idea of the middle-aged world was not too relevant nowadays. Maybe it was better to go for something more futuristic. I was totally opposed to the idea. I got very defensive because I was terrified of the fact that I needed to change all the things that I was working on at the moment. All those assets, characters, etc. was all useless now. I started feeling that starting over might just kill my motivation. But at the same time, I had the feeling that he was actually right. This is something that you will also face when you are creating your game. You will realize that sometimes you need to change what you're doing, and this can be very scary. But thinking like this is one big mistake. You see, your first idea is just your starting point. Your creative process needs to be organic. And that's why it's so important to have a good pre-production phase. The more you plan, the closer you will be to your final idea when you start. To my surprise, when I started looking for references for futuristic stuff, a lot of elements that now I love about Synth Hunters started to emerge. It gave me so much creative freedom, and the frustration quickly turned around and changed into excitement again. I started thinking of a base for the lore of the game. It looked something like this. The game takes place in a post-apocalyptic world. AI-driven robots took over the world and they use humans as entertainment. They breed them to fight in the arena, like a gladiator coliseum thing, but for robots. Some of these people managed to break their chains and escaped. They are now living in hidden settlements deep in the forest. They will need to go into the wilderness to gather resources to improve their gear and their town. Out there, they will have to fight robots that lurk around hunting humans for fun. Okay, nice. Now I have some sort of base, and it was time to create a set of rules for the universe of the game, and I strongly suggest you create at least 2. It's a great way to keep things consistent. It looks something like this. Enemies will be mostly robots. Some of them can be goofy, some others can be more fierce or cooler. Weapons and armor need to have some sort of technology vibe to them. I want to have calls to popular culture, iconic elements of our everyday life. In this post-apocalyptic world, the everyday items of our present became nostalgic objects from the past. I also wanted to have calls to classic MMORPG elements from the games I hold so dearly from my teenage years, but I wanted to include them with some sort of twist. For instance, the classic skeleton enemy could be a recycled human instead. Robots pick up human remains and they add robotics part to them and they come back to life as enemies. The classic health potions could be a capsule that when you press it, it releases some healing gas. It's like a technologic version of it. I love clothing, so I decided to introduce some of that. Some armor sets or vanity items could be mixtures between cool looking clothing and robotic parts. So, believe it or not, setting up these rules make it so much easier to find inspirations because you have a guide. So many other cool things and ideas came from this big change of directions. I could be talking about this forever, but I don't want to take too much of your time. Let me know in the comments if you want to hear more about my experience creating this game, what you would like to know about, or how could I improve the devlog, or anything you want. I would also like to invite you to join my Discord server. There we have a beautiful community of very friendly people. In there we chat about the game and also about each other's art and anything in general. So feel free to join, the links are on the description. Thank you very much for listening and see you in the next one.